What's up, everyone? So, confession, this installment that you're going to hear, which is our third installment of Not So Sexy February, was not the actual planned topic. I did record another episode on a different topic. I sent it out to some trusted people for feelers, had them listen to it and give me feedback on how they felt listening to it. And I got to say, I'm not incredibly surprised at the feedback I got. So, the installment was supposed to be on sex offenders. I recorded an entire episode on sex offenders, but I have to admit that even as I was recording it, it felt awkward. Kind of makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And also, when I was researching it for the episode, I realized how vastly different a lot of the state laws are regarding the rights of sex offenders and little hoops to jump through, things like that. So it was a really complicated topic, as well as it being awkward. And so I sent it out for some feelers, and I wasn't surprised. Like I said, everyone came back and said, I mean, there's good information in there, but yet the whole conversation just felt a little awkward. And I have to admit, yes, of course it is. It is an awkward conversation. It's an awkward topic. And I think it's probably a topic that definitely deserves some discussion, but maybe not its own episode dedicated to it. I think it's something really good to kind of cover in maybe an episode that's divided into three little topics that are somehow related. So I'm going to put a pin in the sex offender discussion. I will come back to it. It's not going to be an entire episode. It's going to be a small segment of an episode, just because that's what feels a little bit better as far as putting content out there on that topic, because it's obviously a very emotional topic. It's got a lot of emotions attached to it. There's a lot of feelings attached to it. So I feel like it's one that we should probably talk about, but it's going to be one part of an episode and not necessarily the entire episode. But for this episode, we're going to talk about pet damage. Because whether or not you accept pets, ESAs and therapy animals are becoming sort of more and more of a prevalent thing, especially in the past, I'd say 3 years. And so I feel like now the topic of pets in general is sort of less polarizing. And in particular, I want to focus on pet damage, and particularly like what I've learned about removing the smells or the traces and some of the things that we've done and experiences that I've had in dealing with pet odor damage. I'm hoping that you're going to learn some useful information in this that will help you either save money or walk into one of these situations with a game plan now that you've heard some of my stories on pet damage.
Building a real estate portfolio is as much about buying properties as being a de facto entrepreneur. I'm Karina Ufinger. I'm a multi-property investor, rental management company CEO, and also a landlord coach. I'm going to show you the systems and knowledge you need to thrive as a real estate entrepreneur. From your first property purchase to building a portfolio of passive income where you work less than 5 hours a week, you'll learn the essential information and skills to build a profitable portfolio and live the life you truly want. Whether you are well on your journey or just starting out, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Landlord Chick podcast.
So I wanted to talk about pet damage and specifically pet urine to go with the theme of Not So Sexy February, because I feel like it's one of those topics that a lot of people sort of end up having to deal with, and especially nowadays when if you didn't plan on taking pets, but now you have ESA or therapy animals, depending on where you live, thrown at you, and you can't necessarily deny them. Some of you that didn't plan on being pet landlords are now indeed being pet landlords. So I wanted to impart some of the knowledge that I have gotten over probably the 15 years experience that I have of doing property management. I want to share the tips and tricks that I've had for dealing with pet odor damage, and also helping give some hints about things that actually increase the potential of getting pet damage, especially urine damage in a unit. I don't take pets in my rentals, but I do currently have at least one ESA. So I'm definitely in that avenue of people that didn't plan on being pet landlords, but I am. Now, for me, the reason was more strategic because every rental that I own is old. I mean, seriously old. I have rentals that were built in 1860, 1888, 1905, and I think 1893. So I have really old rentals. And for that reason, I have a lot of like original architecture. So, like crown molding, door trim, floor trim. I have a lot of original woodwork in there that is hard to match if it gets damaged. So, for that reason, I've never chosen to take pets. Now, I've had the opportunity to manage probably hundreds of pets through other people's properties, and that's where the bulk of my experience comes with dealing with pet odor. Now, first, before we talk about actually removing the pet odor, there's a couple of things I want to point out about pets and what creates urine and odor situations. Obviously, with dogs, I think we all kind of generally know that dogs and their decorum, really 90% of it comes down to the human being and only 10% of it is the actual animal. So it all gets back to how they were trained. It all gets back to the environment that they have with their owner, how their owner treats them. I do know that there are some rental places that actually require a puppy kindergarten gift certificate, or not gift certificate, a certificate that shows completion of the courses. I've seen that pop up more than once, that animals have to have a puppy kindergarten certificate in order to be accepted. Is that a bad idea? No, that's not really a bad idea. I don't even think it's a horrible idea. If I were someone who was accepting pets, I probably would feel the same way, that I would like to see some sort of puppy certificate. Of course, you come into an issue where maybe the puppy is 10 years old and they no longer have the certificate. What you would do in that situation if you're requiring a certificate, I'm not entirely sure. But so if you have an animal that's well trained, it's gone through school, things like that, assuming that the owner is semi-responsible and gets home to take care of the pet's needs and let him out in time, then you likely won't have a problem with pet odor. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of crating dogs, so I'm not really going to get into that conversation about crating them during the day. Um, I've never really crated a dog at all. My family never really did when we had dogs growing up. We just sort of put them in the kitchen when we were gone, and we weren't necessarily going to be able to trust them, or we knew we'd be gone for a long time and nobody was going to let them out. We never actually crated them, and that's probably where my level of discomfort comes with crating dogs, is that we never did it. Now, sometimes people like to put out potty pads for their dogs. These are a horrible idea. Whoever decided that potty pads are a great thing to use for dog training or to put out when you're going to be away for too long, I'm sorry, in my personal opinion, they're a moron. Because all what they're doing is they're reinforcing to the animal that it's okay to go right there because you put something down that says they can go there. But here's the thing. As soon as the pet knows that they can go there, whether or not there's a little blanket or potty pad there, they're going to start going there if you're not around and they need to go. And what I've actually noticed from talking to people that have used potty pads is that the first time they put out potty pads, they didn't really get used. They went off the potty pads. Then they came home and they went on the potty pads. But then they noticed that like they were gone for 3 hours and the dog just kind of decided, I have to go to the bathroom. I've gone here before and it's been fine. I'm going to go right now, even though there's not a potty pad. So I highly recommend that if you do accept pets, you do not tolerate potty pads. They just create a bad habit situation for the dog. Dogs can't necessarily tell all the time the differences between when option A is okay and when it's not. So I highly recommend that you just disallow potty pads and don't go down that path at all with your tenants. The other thing I want to say in regards to pet odors is that while dog odors are not great, like it's obviously doesn't smell like flowers or anything amazing from a dog, cat odors are worse. So cat odor is about 10 times worse. If you talk to professionals, particularly carpet cleaners, they will tell you that they will clean 10 carpets with dog smells over one carpet with cat smells. And that's because of the stark differences in basically the, I guess you'd say maybe efficacy or the potency of the odor. Cat odor through urine or through markings is just much more nauseating and strong. It just sticks in your nostrils and it really kind of hits you hard. It's incredibly hard for carpet cleaners to get out cat smell from carpet. When we go through this episode, I'm going to tell you a trick for dog urine about carpet, and I can tell you right now that you cannot apply that same trick to cat urine and have it work. Cat urine is just the absolute worst. So generally speaking, be prepared that if you accept cats, there's the possibility you'll be dealing with cat urine. Now, when do you get cat urine? Well, you get cat urine if you have, obviously, a male cat that's not fixed, markings and so on and so forth. If you get a female that's in heat, they can actually do little markings as well, obviously. It's part of the natural, life progression there. So if an animal's in heat, she will leave little markings as well. Other than that, if we go beyond them being fixed, the most likely culprit for there being cat odor in a unit is going to come down to an aversion to the litter box. So whether it be they're too fat for the litter box, and yes, that's a thing. One of my cats was too fat for her litter box. But even once we got her like a gigantic under the bed tote as a litter box, she still was like, no thanks, I'm good. I'll just go right outside the litter box. So anyway, that's one of the bigger reasons that you have cat odors is an aversion to the litter box. It can be either they're too big for it. It can be that, obviously sometimes they get cornered by other cats in litter box. There's only one litter box. Then there's just cats that they sit in the litter box and they're like, oh, I'm doing good, but they don't understand trajectory or certain things. And then it kind of goes outside the litter box. They're trying to be good pets and they don't necessarily know how to correct it because they don't necessarily know what they're doing wrong. But those are some of the ways that you end up with cat odor, even if you have fixed animals. Now, how can we address these things? So if we've got cat odor in a unit, I'm sorry to say that you're just going to have to basically replace almost everything that cat urine touched. There's no way around it. The way it permeates, the way it gets into everything, it just doesn't make sense to try and salvage anything because of just how strong the odor is. I've tried probably dozens of odor removing products out there because of the situations I've had with my own cats in my house or my older cats that are no longer with us. I can honestly say none of them worked. None of them worked. So I really have given up on doing any sort of like odor treatment when it comes to cat odor. That is something I just suck it up, buttercup, and replace whatever I have to. I don't bother trying to treat it, trying to remove it, trying to mask it. It's way, way too prevalent of a smell to actually make that happen successfully. I'm sorry I don't have any tips or tricks for that, but that's just the way it goes, I guess. Now with dogs, we have more options. So with dogs, your markings are going to come from basically not being able to get out inside in time. So whether it be, they're in the process of training and, oh, shoot, the puppy just didn't quite make it there. Or the owner was gone for a while, didn't really plan on it. And maybe the dog tried to be really good, but it just got to the point where it's like, no, sorry, I got to go and let it loose. What the situation is you have to deal with and what you're going to have to do is going to depend on where they actually chose to leave their little blessing. If we're talking the kitchen area, we've got flooring that's likely going to be like sheet vinyl, stick and peel tile, or ceramic tile. So running through those sheet vinyl, honestly, that's the best case scenario. What you'll find is that most sheet vinyls aren't going to really absorb the odor. So basically what you might have is a little bit of a stain maybe on there. You can use magic eraser to try and erase the stain. Normally, I just start with baking soda and vinegar, and if I really want to kind of go a little bit harsher with it, I'll actually use lemon as well. I'll just go in there and try and like scour with a little bit of salt as well, and just scour as much as I can over the surface and see what part of the stain I can get rid of. If I can't, then I pull out my magic eraser and I'm using that. But you're really not going to have to necessarily do too much odor removal with sheet vinyl. It never hurts to do like vinegar and baking soda over the area just for odor treatment. And then basically you should be good to go with sheet vinyl because it's not really something that's going to absorb a lot of the odor. If anything, you're going to have to replace it more based on maybe stain. So if it was white or like a light colored vinyl and they just weren't that good at cleaning it up all the time, that's when you're likely going to have to replace sheet vinyl in this situation. Now, peel and stick tile. If you don't know what this was something I think was really kind of trendy like about 12 years ago. It was really touted as like this like money saving thing, especially for rentals, because it would be vinyl flooring that was, well, peel and stick. So you pulled off a backing and it was like self-adhesive and you stuck it on the pre-existing sheet vinyl. Now, regardless of installation, what I can tell you from experience is that dogs, for some reason, their pet urine is really, really good at disintegrating the vinyl adhesive on those tiles. I don't know what it is, but when I have gone back and pulled up all the tiles, because sometimes I've had to do that just based on like stuff going on in the subfloor underneath, I've often wished that I had a dog with a really full bladder that I could just have like walk around the kitchen and pee everywhere to loosen up the adhesive. I don't know what it is in their urine, but it's really good for that for some reason. But anyway, I digress about that really, really weird tangent there. So when you have a dog that goes consistently on steel and pick and steel tile, what's going to happen is it's going to get underneath because there's usually very, very small holes because this flooring was mostly installed by do-it-yourselfers. So it's likely not going to be a complete flush bump up against each other. They're going to need to be pulled up. They're likely not going to be sticking very well anyway. They're going to be shifting already. You're going to pull them up. You're going to deodorize underneath there. But I also recommend you pull up one tile each along the circumference as well. So go one tile out in addition to like the 4 that Fido actually peed on. I would go ahead and do one surrounding in all directions as well, just to be sure you get everything up and cleared out. You're going to go through and do your deodorizing under there. Then you're going to go ahead and replace your pick and steel tile, assuming you can get the same or you have extras, and then that'll be addressed. Now, with ceramic tile, the great thing about ceramic tile is that the tile itself is not going to absorb any pet odor. The unfortunate side is that the grout definitely will. Now, getting grout to come clean can sometimes be very tricky. What I have found really sort of works best for getting grout clean is to actually bleach the grout. So I like to use color safe bleach because if you don't use color safe bleach, you could end up bleaching your tile if you don't necessarily rinse it very well and it basically ends up sitting there on the tile by accident. It could end up bleaching the tile a little bit. So I use color safe bleach. I tend to get the thicker formula. I pour it on the grout. I brush it in with a toothbrush. I let it sit, and then I'll actually come back and I'll throw some baking soda on it as well, and I'll scrub that in, and then I'll clean all of that out. Now that's going to work for odor, and it can work pretty well for stain. If you have more stain, one of the best stain removers that really exists out there beyond like a magic eraser is honestly just going to be creating a paste of baking soda and vinegar. That works really, really good for stain removal. If you have difficult ones, you can use actually cream of tartar, something that you find in the spice aisle. That is the main ingredient for tartar sauce. Using cream of tartar as well will give you a little bit added cleaning bonus to getting rid of some stains on grout, but that's my go-to for removing the grout stain. The odor, will probably be removed at that point as well. Baking soda is your best friend for any sort of odor, and that definitely goes for removing odor on grout. Sometimes I'll just sprinkle a whole bunch of baking soda on the entire floor, let it sit there, and then at some point I'll come back and I'll vacuum up that baking soda, and that helps take care of the odor. Now, let's move on to carpet, and this is where I actually have a legitimate money-saving tip for you. With carpet, and this is with dogs, not with cats. I basically already told you, with cats, replace it. Sorry. But with dogs, if you're dealing with a situation where less than 50% of the carpet has been urinated on, there's a really good savings that you can make here. So the first step that you want to do is you want to roll up the existing carpet. You're going to roll it up, you're going to tear it out, but you're going to be reusing it, so be careful when you pull it out. You don't want to necessarily just cut random places and pull it up. Pull it up intact as much as you can, roll it up, and get it out of your way, out of that room. Then you're going to have the pad. The pad absolutely has to go. So the pad has to get replaced. Cleaning pad is pointless because you end up doing more damage than anything to it. It really can't be cleaned. And chances are, if it got through the backing on the carpet, it's going to be in the pad, so just chuck the pad. Then you're going to come down to your subfloor surface, whether it be wood or concrete. In the spots where Fido left her blessings, I want you to just look and see if you see any sort of marking, whether it be faint or obviously there in your face. If you have faint or obvious ones, you're going to go to the hardware store, or you're going to grab Zinsser's odorless primer. You're going to roll that out just over the spots where you have evidence of markings, little outlines, or just blatant like, hey, yeah, there was definitely sitting dog urine here. Roll the primer over on those, likely 2 coats, let that dry. Have new carpet pad installed. Bring your carpet back in, unroll it, reinstall it, then get your carpet cleaned, and make sure to point out to your carpet cleaner the spots on the carpet where you will need pet disodor to happen. This will save you easily $200 per room that you do this in, because you're saving your carpet, which is the most expensive part. Yes, you're replacing your pad, but the pads are pennies on the dollar compared to carpet. And you're going to save yourself a whole bunch of grief, and you're going to be able to keep the carpet that you have in the unit rather than maybe having mismatch, because obviously we hate to replace the entire unit. So if it was just the living room that Fido went on, you can clean the living room and then not have weird carpet in the living room and then everything else be something different. I'm one of those people that it kind of bothers me when my carpeting doesn't match. So I like this option now of being able to salvage pretty much the majority of the carpets that I find Fido has left blessings on, because it just makes it so much better. I don't have to worry about having carpeting that doesn't match or weighing out, am I going to replace all the carpet now? This works tremendously well. I have never had anyone come back and say that they have an odor in the carpet from a pet with the new tenant. I've never had that happen. The only time I've had to go back with a pet odor has been when we didn't address woodwork that we didn't know whether or not we should have. And this is actually kind of a true story. I have gone back into a unit. We redid a half bath after a cat situation. And we replaced one wall of the trim because we knew that's where the litter box was. But we didn't actually end up replacing the rest of the trim. And then it turns out we just likely should have. That was the owner's call, that we didn't replace everything with the trim. But there was odor in that trim that this person with cat allergies was sensitive to, and they could smell it. They didn't know there was a cat in there before. They didn't see it with the cat box. They didn't see anything. So they had no idea there was a cat there previously, but their allergies definitely sensed it after using the half bath consistently. So with that sort of situation, if you get dog urine in the woodwork, with that, if you have painted woodwork, again, grab yourself a can of Zinsser, prime it, and then paint it. put it back on there. Now you might be saying, well, wait a minute, I just go to Lowe's and get a replacement piece of trim. Sure, in most situations that makes sense, but if you're in my boat where you have sort of ornate or harder to match trim, I'm going to go the route of pulling it off, sanding it down, and priming and painting that trim and reattaching the old stuff, just because it's going to make a lot more sense for me time wise than driving around to 5 different rehab stores trying to find a good enough match, when I can just take that off, do that work with it, and have it be a complete match by reusing what's already there. All right, guys, this is a jam-packed episode about pet odor. And I know, you know what, pets are one of those things where it's like, I know there's a lot of people out there like, no, I just don't want to mess around with them. But again, I felt this was pertinent because with the way some of the laws and regulations are going in various states, that it's harder and harder to run a no pet property when you have options like ESA and therapy animals. I hope you guys enjoyed this installment of Not So Sexy February. We're going to wrap it up next week. We're going to have another topic of Not So Sexy. And because the third installment kind of got scratched, I'm not necessarily going to give you a preview. Because, you know what? We'll see if the fourth one goes to air or if it ends up being like the third one where I end up re-recording it and getting a new topic. But I hope you guys have a great week. Again, if you have any suggestions, hit me up over on Landlord Chick on Instagram, and you can send me a message over on Anchor Podcasts. Watch my Instagram profile because the week after this airs, I'm actually going to be putting a Q&A in my story so I can start gathering questions for the Q&A episode that I want to do to kick off March. And I will have more information for that in the next episode, I think. So, all right, guys, I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you later.